Good. Looks like we should be going now. Just gonna double check to make sure everything's where it needs to be. Alrighty. Let's see. Think we should be good. Yes, we're good. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for joining this live stream. I'm very excited to share all the stuff we're going to be doing in the Flux Explorers program with you. But before we get started, just wanted to go over a couple of very basic points. My name is Bart. You may have seen that on LinkedIn or elsewhere. Very excited to be doing this collaboration with ControlPlane. I'll explain a bit more about my background in a minute. But like I said, very, very excited to be here with you today. It's been unfortunately a little bit too long since I've done one of these programs, but I've been doing them for the last 5 years, and it's always an extremely rewarding experience. I get to learn a lot, and I certainly hope that everybody else gets to learn a lot as well. If we are not connected yet on LinkedIn, you can find me there. And yeah, my name is Bart Farrell. You can find me on different platforms using my name, and I'll also be sharing my email address later on with you folks. So that we can be in touch in the document that you'll be building to do the Explorers program. All right, Explorers program is very easy to be involved. I'm going to say this time and time again, but there are no prerequisites. The only thing that we require is that you're willing to learn, to have fun, to share your knowledge, your experience, to not be afraid to learn in public, to not be afraid to make mistakes. It's no big deal. The main thing here is trying. That's the thing that we value most. So yeah, there's absolutely no problem. If you have any questions during the live stream that we'll be doing today, or at any other point in time, you can feel free to contact me on LinkedIn, and I would be happy to help you out in any way possible. If for whatever reason you can't stay for the full 30 minutes today for today's live stream, it's not a problem. I'll be sharing the slides with everyone on LinkedIn later on, and also the link to this live stream. So if for whatever reason you've got to drop early, that's not a problem. And also in the subsequent live streams that we'll be doing every Friday, you can join, or if you're not able to, for whatever the reason, you can watch them later, and we can be communicating asynchronously that way. So I want to just take these couple minutes to get started, just to double check where everyone's connecting from. Hello, thanks so much for joining. If you want to share in the chat where you're joining from, I'm joining from Bilbao in Spain. All right, although I'm originally from the United States. I'll explain a little bit more about that later on. If you want to just drop here in the chat where you're connecting from today, that way we can get a bit of an idea where everyone's at geographically speaking. Because I think from the signups that I saw, we do have people from different, Canada, awesome. And I hope the Canadian women's rugby team enjoys success today. I know they have a very important match in the Women's Rugby World Cup. That's very exciting. My grandmother is Canadian. Originally she was from Manitoba, so nothing but love for Canadian folks out there. That being said, we got someone in Berlin, Germany. Very nice. I was there in July. One of my favorite cities in the world. Berlin's super, super cool. So thank you very much for joining us today. We got someone in London. Good. I will be there hopefully in a couple of weeks, heading out to an event in London called AI for the Rest of Us. And we'll hopefully be seeing some of the folks from ControlPlane as well while I'm out there. We got some good. Got someone joining from India as well. Good. I was in India last year in December. Hope to be there again soon. That's very exciting. So like I said, I've got some slides. I'll tell you right now, ahead of time, my slides, I am not a graphic designer. I know some really talented graphic designers, but I wasn't able to get my slides to them in time for today. Really just wanted to focus on practical information so that everyone has a clear idea about what this whole program is about, what we expect from you, and what you're going to get out of it as well in the process, all right? So I hope that this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Need to get back here into Riverside real quick. Let's take a look. So, yep, here we go. So I'll get rid of that. I will share my screen. I'll try to pop back and forth to the YouTube chat, but please let me know if you have any questions at any point in time. This, as you probably saw in the promo leading up to it, this is the Flux Explorers program. Flux is a CNCF open source project. All right, we'll be speaking about it. It is what's called a graduated project. We'll talk a little bit about the differences between the different kinds of projects that are in the CNCF. When I say the CNCF, what does CNCF mean? Does anyone know what CNCF means? If you know what it means, please write down the full definition in the chat so we can establish a common working definition that we can all refer to, because we will be talking about this a lot, right? When we talk about Flux, that it's a CNCF project. If you're new to this, if you don't know what a CNCF project is, that's totally fine also. We are all here to learn, to support each other on our learning journeys. So if you don't know what CNCF is, that's totally okay. I would be happy to explain that to you. CNCF stands for Cloud Native Computing Foundation. All right. So as the name suggests, it's a foundation, all right, for projects, open source projects that are what's called cloud native, right? And we'll get into some more details later on about where this comes from and the things that are involved in being in the CNCF, the kind of stuff that people. Good job, Chris. All right, so yeah, I'm sorry, I think I'm operating with a bit of delay. All right, but it's cool. So you're well versed with this already, so that's very helpful. Thank you, Lily. That's great. So like I said, these are going to be some terms that you're going to be hearing about when we're talking about open source, when we're talking about contributors, when we're talking about maintainers, we're talking about the people that are involved in these projects that make them live and breathe. ControlPlane happens to be the organization that is currently, one of the strongest backers of this project that's called Flux. That's part of the CNCF. Like I said, if these terms are new to you, don't worry about it at all. All right, this is super beginner friendly. We don't expect anyone to have previous knowledge or experience with these things. You're here to learn, you're here to enjoy, you're here to meet people, you're here to build your personal brands and have a good time in the process. So going back to the slides, let me get back to my slides right here. Cool. So the agenda for today is very straightforward. We're going to talk about why we're here, how will you learn, right? The different ways that you'll be able to do this. Talk a little bit about who I am, want to know more about who you are, what is the CNCF, what is Flux, what is the Explorers program, and then the next steps, right? So it should be pretty straightforward. I tried to make this as simple as possible. I may have not succeeded, so if that's the case, feel free to stop me at any point in time. Put your questions in the chat. Any doubts, questions, comments, concerns, improvements, anything like that, always open to hear that. So like I said, let's just jump right in with the very first part. Why are we here? All right, so the purpose of this Explorers program that we'll be doing every Friday from now until the first Friday of November, all right, which I believe is the 6th. So we'll be meeting every single Friday between now and then for around 30 minutes. And then there will be optional other sessions in terms of mentoring, in terms of connecting with other people in the CNCF as well as in the Flux project more specifically, so you can get direct access to those folks and ask them questions and learn from them. But the point about this is while we're talking about something that's very technical, there's a very non-technical focus here, which is about building confidence, right? And we build confidence by having experience. Experience is where it's okay to make mistakes, where we can fail, where we can not be right 100% of the time, because that's how we learn. If we're doing things that are so comfortable that we're going to be right all the time, we're probably not going to grow as much as we might like to, right? So the purpose of this is to build confidence, right? By trying something new, by having a space in which you have the resources where you can ask questions and get the support that you need to feel comfortable about trying that new thing, which in this case is going to be learning about the open source project called Flux. And also one of the purposes here is to learn about open source, right? Some people have experience with open source. Other people have no experience with open source. That's okay. If you don't have experience, if this is your first time hearing about open source projects, that's not a big deal. The Cloud Native Computing Foundation is not the only place where open source projects exist. There are many different places where open source projects exist. We'll be speaking about the Cloud Native Computing Foundation for the, throughout the duration of this Explorers program cycle, but I don't want to say that there aren't other opportunities to get involved in open source in other areas. All right. In terms of the purpose, also once again to have fun. Prerequisites. I think we try to make this pretty clear when we were promoting this on LinkedIn to let everybody know there are no prerequisites. All right. We've done Explorers programs in the past. We've had people as young as 13 years old and people that were well into their 50s. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter if you are a DevOps engineer or if you're a front-end engineer or if you're someone who likes studying world history. It doesn't matter, right? It does not matter. What's important, the only prerequisites that there are is that having a positive attitude, being nice, being willing to learn. Those are the things that are very important here. So if you're lacking those qualities, if you're not sure, let me know, and we'll find a way to make sure that that you're starting with that foundation to feel more comfortable at the place that you're in and the things that you're going to be doing. And the other thing to mention about open source, getting involved in projects like Flux or the CNCF in general, is that this is not a race, right? Where people start having problems when it comes to getting started, contributing to open source and learning about these technologies is when they're in a big hurry and they expect to learn everything all at once. It's probably not going to be a match made in heaven, right? Because these things take time, like most things in life. It's like learning a language or learning really how to do anything. most of the time we're not going to get 100% right the first try, right? Like I said, there are many different open source projects out there, both in the CNCF as well as in lots of other places. You need to find the project that works best for you. In this case, we're going to be speaking specifically about Flux and some resources that I'll be sharing with you so that you can get more experience with it, you understand how it works, that you can put it into your own words, you can be learning in public. But I insist, this is not a race, right? So no one needs to feel like they need to learn everything all at once, or that there's some, clock that's ticking and that they're going to be missing out on something, right? If they don't get it 100% right the first time. Not it at all. I've been involved with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and projects in its ecosystem since 2020, and I'm learning all the time. All right, I'll explain more about my background later, but I just want to insist, this is not a race, so do not feel like there's any pressure to become an expert on something in the span of a few weeks. All right, it's not about it. It's not what this is about at all. This is about getting experience and having fun, growing and learning together, right? And just really enjoying the process and knowing that you can take the very same model that we'll be using to learn about Flux in this case, and you can apply that to absolutely anything, right? Whether it's in the open source world or anywhere else for that matter. It's about building a learning path, about absorbing knowledge, processing that knowledge, and then sharing it with others, right? This is what this is all. Oh, and Chris, I completely hear you on this. Guilty of wanting to run before I can walk. That is me in a nutshell. Actually, it's the first time I'm hearing that, so thank you for sharing that. I myself have attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, which means that I really want to start running before I can walk, and I get really excited about doing it. And then sometimes we'll even get frustrated that I can't move necessarily as quickly as I'd like to. But we've got to embrace the fact that these things take time and really just focus on enjoying the process. And know that you'll be enjoying the process with others that are out there that are going through the same things and that we can support each other mutually. All right? So let's keep moving with the slides. Now, how are you going to learn? You're going to be learned by asking questions. You're going to be learning by looking for answers, right? You will have the resources to do this. I'm going to be giving you resources where there will be quite a few things that you don't know, right? We do not expect you to have perfect understanding, or maybe that even 80% of the things that are being discussed are things that you're like, honestly, I'm not familiar with this. No one's expecting you to understand this perfectly, right? What we do expect is for you to be willing to dig into the information and find those answers, right? Nowadays, we have a lot of resources that we didn't have in the past, such as, large language models, ChatGPT, Claude, etc. While they are very helpful, I don't want you to rely on them exclusively or to over rely on them, because I want you to use those big brains that you have out there, okay? And I want you to try to imagine that you're doing this exercise as we would have in the year 2021, 2022, when we didn't have as much access to AI and had to do things a little bit more old school in the sense of just Googling or looking around for information. Like I said, how will you learn? You'll learn by asking questions to me, as well as the folks involved in the Explorers program, the mentors, the ambassadors, the maintainers, the other people that are going to be here. You'll be asking them questions. I want you to be curious, not taking no for an answer. When I say that is, if you don't know the answer and you can't find it, find somebody else who has, keep trying. It's not always going to be one size fits all when it comes to looking for answers and getting the information that you want. So being tenacious, being persistent, not giving up if you can't find on the first try, that's what I'm talking about here. Next point, not being afraid to make mistakes. You're going to be doing things that you might be doing for the first time, right? Generally speaking, in this process, you're going to consume content, all right? You're going to digest that content by writing down the things that you don't know and finding answers to them. And then you're going to be sharing the knowledge that you've acquired with others. You're going to be condensing that knowledge into LinkedIn posts or videos, depending on what you're most comfortable with, and you're going to be sharing that knowledge with others. And no knowledge is too basic, right? So just because you might find it basic or elementary or beginner friendly, that's great. That means that other beginners out there can benefit from the work that you're doing, and now they'll feel more confident about approaching an open source project like Flux, right? So you're good. And when we share our knowledge, that's really where we solidify the learnings, because we have to think about how to make them approachable, how to make them understandable, how to make them digestible for other folks out there who maybe have no experience with this material as well, right? So you'll be doing that through posts and or videos on LinkedIn, and we'll also do an event, an online event at the end of the program on November 6th, right? So mark your calendars for that date. I'm just gonna double check really quickly to make sure that, no, sorry, November 7th. We'll do a dress rehearsal on November 6th, but on Friday, November 7th, that will be our sort of final project where we will do an online event together. And don't worry, we'll have all this information with with timeline and everything like that shared as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Srinivas, and good to see that you're connecting from Hyderabad in India. Wonderful. Now, let's keep going. So who am I? I come from a very non-technical background. As I said previously, my name is Bart Farrell. I'm from the United States, from near San Francisco. I've been living in Spain, in the north of Spain, in a city called Bilbao for the last 14 years. And I come from a very non-technical background, right? I studied humanities in university, and I got my master's degree in Near and Middle Eastern studies. So I came into tech from a very non-technical background. I got involved in tech about, let's say, 8 years ago. No, 9 years ago. And working for a British software development company here in Bilbao, doing talent management, organizing events, internal talks, external talks, things of that nature with this company. And that's how I got started. Then later on got into content creation for other reasons not related to tech, but have since blended those two things since 2020, being very focused on the cloud native ecosystem. I've lived in different countries. I've had lots of different jobs. I've done many different things. I've been a CNCF ambassador. We talked already about what the CNCF is. So there's a group of 270 people that are all over the world that are CNCF ambassadors. And depending on where you are in the world, you can find ambassadors in your country. All right. So if you type CNCF ambassador in Google, you'll get to a link from the CNCF, the Cloud Native Community Foundation, where you can see a map of the entire world. You can see where all the different CNCF ambassadors are. If you're more interested in how to get involved in the local community where you live, in local meetups, in learning about, if you want to volunteer, if you want to network, things like that, I highly recommend finding where the nearest CNCF ambassador is in your area and reaching out to that person and explaining what you're interested in, what you might be able to offer in terms of your experience or your interests, things of that nature. I got my experience creating content in this space in a community called the Data on Kubernetes community, sometimes called the DOC community because of DOK. And I did, I think, about over 240 live streams, lots and lots of online content because during the time of the pandemic, and then also offline content through that community. That was my way of getting experience and coming from a very non-technical background, right? And so I say this because if I can do it, you can too. And I really mean that. I've never written a line of code in my life. I've never had a technical role. I'm not a developer. I'm not an SRE. And I've been able to make this work in this ecosystem because of the other skills that I have. All of us have something to offer. So all of us have a part to play. All of us can contribute in the way that works best for us based on our skill set. So I do not want to hear that you feel intimidated or that you feel scared or worried because you've never done something like this before. That's not a problem. You got to have faith in yourselves. You got to have confidence in yourselves. Don't worry about it. Like I said, if I can do it, you definitely can too. And that's why I've done these programs now multiple times and they work really, really well because we're all doing this together. We're all learning at the same time. No one's judging anybody based on their level of experience. So like I said, you do not need to be afraid about that. I understand that it can be intimidating, that we can worry about things like imposter syndrome, but it's really just about figuring out what can you contribute based on your interests, your experience, the things that you're passionate about, the objectives that you have in your work life or your student studies or anything of that nature. In terms of what I do now, one of my primary things is I run a podcast called KubeFM. As the name suggests, we talk a lot about Kubernetes. So if you go to YouTube, you'll see the KubeFM YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that. That's where some of the resources that we'll be sharing will be located. So you'll definitely want to check that out. And so I talk to people from all over the world every week about their experiences working with Kubernetes, right? And we have conversations about articles that they've written or topics that they find very interesting. And they help others by sharing that knowledge in public in a similar way to what you're going to be doing by sharing your knowledge that you'll be acquiring in public. I mentioned hip hop because that was one of the ways that I connected with this ecosystem, being a non-technical person, but being someone who's very passionate about music. I play drums, bass, guitar, and I've always enjoyed hip hop music. So when I was in the Data on Kubernetes community, I used to write raps about every single live stream that we would do. And it would be a way to celebrate the guests that we had and to speak about, the material that they had covered and share it in a unique and engaging way. So that maybe people didn't relate so much to the technical stuff, but the way of sharing it through a summary based on music was a way for people to connect and like I said, engage with that material in a way that wasn't necessarily traditional and that perhaps can make it more accessible to others. So yeah, very nice to have you with us, Colleen. Thank you so much for joining. So going back to the slide here, like I said, there are many different ways to get involved in this. Really, the important question to ask is, what are you interested in? What are you passionate about? You can find a way to connect that with the cloud native ecosystem, right? And this Explorers program will be no exception. Now, so thinking about who you are, like I said, what's your job? Are you working? Are you studying? What did you study? What does that say about you as a person? What are the kind of things you're doing in your job? What are the things that you would like to be doing in your job? Being open to these things and thinking about how you can plug those skills in here to this program, right? It's very, very flexible. You get to decide how you want to share the knowledge. Do you want to do it using technical analogies to speak to more of a technical audience? Do you want to use metaphors, speaking about superheroes? Do you want to use memes? Do you want to use GIFs? That's all up to you, right? How you express your knowledge is completely in your hands. I can show you examples of different ways to do it, but I really want to encourage you to feel free to express yourself in the way that feels most natural and that you feel will be most engaging and genuine based on how you feel about the things that you're learning. So like I said, all these are different elements that make us different. The things that we do at work, the things that we've studied in the past, or what we're studying in the present, or perhaps what we'd like to study in the future. Things about our families, right? There are many different kinds of families out there. So what does that say about you in terms of, are you from a bigger family? Are you from a smaller family? Have you lived in different places? What are your interests, your hobbies, your passions, your values? What are the things that you find really important? That will help you out a lot in whether it's with open source or anything else, figure out where's the best place for me to be based on the things that are really important to me. It's because maybe I want to work in an environment where there are certain elements that will be present and other elements that won't, right? Sometimes it's easier perhaps by process of elimination rather than just simply thinking about the things that we really like. What about the things we don't like, right? Your work experience. You may have work experience. You may not have a lot of work experience. That's okay. Your work experience may be from restaurants. It may be from working in an office. It could be working at a school, whatever it happens to be. All those things, though, inform you more about the kind of stuff that you can do based on the things you've done in the past and will make you feel more confident when you're approaching these things, right? Perhaps you've never done something about an open source project, but you have probably done something about new material or an area that wasn't necessarily familiar to you at some point in your life, right? In terms of technologies, what technologies are you familiar with? Are you familiar with mobile application development? Have you worked with big data technologies? Are you more interested in developing video games? That's really up to you, all right? But the trick is how can you then relate that to the technologies that we'll be speaking about here, which are open source, which have their own nature in terms of how they function. And like I said, also objectives. Are you currently looking for a job? Are you just interested in learning more about open source because you find it to be an interesting topic? Like I said, that's totally up to you. So everyone's going to be approaching this in a different way. Good. Now, to talk about Flux, to talk about this, we're definitely going to need to talk about the CNCF. So I already said it's a Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It's 10 years old. There are many projects. All right, if you go to Google and look up the CNCF landscape, you'll see a ton of projects. Don't worry about that. For right now, we're just going to be focusing on Flux. There are many different people involved. There are lots of opportunities to get experience. But like I said, this is not a race, folks, right? This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. There are different opportunities to get involved in this ecosystem through mentorship, like more formal programs like LFX mentoring. There's a wonderful initiative called Merge Forward, which includes lots of different areas based on perhaps folks like myself that are neurodiverse, for people from different backgrounds. There are for groups for folks that are deaf and hard of hearing, for folks that are visually impaired. So like I said, the CNCF is a very welcoming space that no matter who you are, where you come from, what walk of life, or things that you like to do, you have a place here, right? You are welcome, and we insist on that. You are always going to be welcome. As long as you're nice and abide by the code of conduct, you have no problems, right? Good first issues in open source projects, that's a way to get experience. Sometimes reviewing documentation, looking for typographical errors, those things are ways to get involved. Attending local meetups, attending online meetings, you don't even have to participate. Just being there to listen, to get more informed, that's totally okay too. You get to set the pace, and it's really important that you don't feel like you have to be in a hurry, all right? But you'll have plenty of time to learn more about the CNCF, all the different projects that are involved, the maintainers of those projects, the people contributing to those projects, people like myself that are CNCF ambassadors, this network of different folks that are all over the world, but united by our interest and passion for open source projects and the people that they bring together. Good. So now what is Flux, right? Flux is one of many CNCF projects, right? It's a tool that makes GitOps possible, right? So GitOps, Git, if you're familiar with that, here's a source of truth, and ops, operations that follow automatically, right? So we're speaking about automation in these kinds of processes. If you're not familiar with it, that's okay, right? You can Google GitOps, you can ask ChatGPT about GitOps, you can ask for an explanation. I use this explanation about Legos because for me it's relatable and I like building things with my hands. So imagine that with Legos that you have a big box of instructions. This would be Git, right? Your source of truth in terms of telling you how things have to be done. And you want to build a Lego castle, right? This would be your Kubernetes cluster. If you're not familiar with these terms, don't worry, right? You can look them up. When you want to change pieces, change the castle that you like so much, you don't pull pieces off. You create a new design in your instruction book, and then imagine that there's a robot that then is going to read the instructions and make sure that the castle fits those instructions exactly how it's supposed to be done, right? This is done in an automatic way, going back to the idea of ops, right? So that there are rules that have to be followed, and then they are enforced, all right, we want to imagine like a robot, or the sense of it being automated, that it's just done automatically, all right? It's a very simplified version using the metaphor of Legos, but I encourage you to find metaphors that work for you. Some people, it may be related to cooking food, or it may be related to a sport, or it may be related to your favorite superhero. I don't care. You need to find what works best for you, okay? Now, so what is Flux? It was started originally by a company called Weaveworks in 2016, 2017, which was run by a person named Alexis Richardson, right? That company, Weaveworks, no longer exists. Alexis now has another company. When Weaveworks was having some issues, ControlPlane stepped in to back the project and make sure that it didn't disappear. The CEO of ControlPlane is Andy Martin, all right? He's a wonderful person who I hope you'll get to meet throughout the course of this Explorers program. Flux is a graduated project. I talked about different CNCF projects. Flux is a graduated project. There are 3 different types of projects, right? There are sandbox projects. That's the most like elementary sort of level in the CNCF. When a project is donated to the CNCF, the initial phase is called the sandbox project. We imagine, children kind of playing in a sandbox, right? So these are things that are going to be there. Then incubated projects means that it's more advanced, and then graduated projects will be the final phase as Flux is in right now, right? The phase that a project is in is based on its maturity, the number of contributors, and adoption. Adoption meaning, is this project being used by what are called end users, right? When we think of end users, like big companies, well-known companies like Coca-Cola or Spotify or Apple or whatever, right? So the success of a project is determined by, is it actually being used? Maybe a project is really nice, but if no one's using it and getting value from it, well, then it's not going to have the longest life inside the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, right? So the Cloud Native Computing Foundation decides on the status of this project through a group called the Technical Oversight Committee. The CNCF is led primarily by Chris Anichek, and you'll understand why I'm mentioning his name, right? So Chris Anichek, Andy Martin, and Alexis Richardson are 3 names that you're going to know very, very well in the first phase of the Explorers program, all right? Because they are featured in the documentary that we have created on KubeFM with the help and support of ControlPlane about the Flux project, all right? So now we're getting into what we're going to be doing. In this Explorers program, you're going to be learning about Flux through the KubeFM documentary, all right? It's very straightforward what you're going to do. You are going to watch, or you can listen to the episodes on any podcast platform that you like. You're going to keep the transcript nearby so that when you're watching or listening, when you hear something, when you hear something or see something, you can go and check it out inside the transcript to find out exactly what that word or term or concept was. You will have a Google Doc open and you will copy and paste all the things that you don't know, right? So you can have a table saying like things that I don't know, and then on the other side of the table, the other column will be the answer, right? So the answers that you will find through Kubernetes documentation, through the Flux documentation, through Google, for whatever works best for you, all right? But it's as simple as write down the things you don't know and then find answers for them. I would not recommend writing everything down that you don't know and then just asking ChatGPT to find all the answers for you. I would recommend doing it the old-fashioned way so you actually get to internalize this knowledge along the way. And maybe when you find answers, you'll have more questions. That's okay. When we've done these projects in the past, People have a lot of different things that they're not sure about. And just because you look them up, it doesn't mean that we're expecting you to be an expert on that either, all right? We just want you to be curious about the information, about what you're listening to and what you're watching, how you're consuming it, and then being mindful of the process afterwards to get the answers, all right? So it's pretty straightforward. Once you've done that and you've got your answers, then you will write a post or record a video about what you learned in each episode. Don't worry though, the only step that you need to do first of all is going to be watching or listening to the episode, and then like I said, writing down those things that you don't know. I will then be in touch with you to let you know about the next step, about either writing a post or creating a video. But the first step is just going to be watching the first episode. The first episode is about 20 minutes long, right? This is not a big ask, right? If you feel ambitious and you like to listen to it or watch it more than once, that's totally okay, or more than twice. But I don't want you to feel like you need to understand everything all in one go. It's totally fine. So don't be afraid about that, right? Embrace this as an opportunity to enjoy the process and to gain more knowledge about what the people are speaking about there, right? There are going to be a total of 4 episodes in the series. We're releasing one every 2 weeks. The first one was released about 2 weeks ago. The second episode will be released on Monday, but don't worry, there's no rush. You don't need to skip ahead. If you're feeling really ambitious, you can, but this is not being required of you. Every Friday, we'll be meeting to check in, to see how you're doing, the things that you've learned, to introduce you to different people in the Flux ecosystem, and to make sure that everything's going smoothly, all right? Other opportunities that we'll have along the way. There will be opportunities for mentoring for your careers, right? The things that you're interested in, where you can ask questions to the people that are maintaining the Flux project, because maybe in the future you would like to be a maintainer or that you would like to be a CNCF ambassador. Either one of those things takes time, so don't feel like you need to become an ambassador or maintainer in a month, because nobody does. It doesn't happen, all right? So do not put that pressure on yourself. Just enjoy the process, all right? You're just getting in contact with this ecosystem. You're gonna start learning little by little. You're gonna start putting the pieces together. Things will start to make more sense. And this will be a project that you'll have experience with, but it doesn't mean it's the only place that you can try something, all right? There are lots of different projects in the CNCF. This is just a way to get hands-on experience with one of them, to be able to ask questions, to be able to learn a lot, to be able to interact with people that are involved in the project, and gain some really cool knowledge that will be useful for anything that you do in the future, right? That's the idea here. We're not just trying to get you stuck on Flux. We want you to be excited about learning, to connect with the folks in the ecosystem, and to be able to have the experience that I've been able to have of meeting people from all over the world who are wonderful and really believe in paying it forward when it comes to helping people out. So in terms of dates, all right, we're gonna have a check-in every Friday at this time between now and November 7th, when we'll have an online event, right? The online event will be after consuming all 4 of these episodes and writing a post or creating a short video, that you will decide a specific area that you would like to focus on Flux, and you will develop a talk that will be 5 minutes long. Now, some people don't like appearing on camera, and that's totally okay. You could either have a person speak for you by giving them a script, or you could just record your voice and be clicking through slides. That's totally okay too, all right? And if you really, really don't want to do that, we can find another way for you to do it as well, all right? We want this to be flexible for everyone based on their interests and the things that they're comfortable with. We don't want to ask you to do something that you really, really don't want to do, so don't worry about that. But like I said, this is how this process is going to work. To complete the process, to complete the Explorers program, if you do the posts and the videos of each of the podcast episodes and then give a 5-minute talk with your camera on or off, the program is completed, and you will get a certificate of completion from ControlPlane and LearnCube, all right? That's the umbrella organization that KubeFM is a part of. More importantly, you'll be able to interact with very important people in the CNCF ecosystem, to get direct access to them, to be able to ask questions, to figure out what's going to be the best step for you to get more involved, whether it's with Flux or with any other project, to make this experience enjoyable and meaningful for you, okay? So right now, the only things you got to worry about: having curiosity, being willing to learn, knowing that you'll be supported. There'll be examples for each piece of content that you'll be creating, but that doesn't mean that you can't put your own spin on it, all right? I will give you examples, but it doesn't mean it's the only way to do it, okay? So like I said, you are more than welcome to feel free to experiment or express yourself in a different way. If you speak a different language and you want to post in that language because your audience is more focused there, or you want to make your content more accessible for people that don't necessarily speak English, that's okay too, all right? The main thing is that you're consuming the content and putting it into your own words and sharing it with others. This is an opportunity for mentoring, career building. Like I said, this is not a sprint. This is not a competition. The idea here is to enjoy. and to be building your brand in the cloud native ecosystem. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. But the next steps, I encourage you to, you can share the link from this live stream that we've done today and tell people that you're going to be, that you're participating in this program. So to encourage other people to join, I think I made it very clear that there are no technical prerequisites, that everyone's welcome to participate. So what I want you to do, the first thing you're going to do is to go to CubeFM, and you will see the first episode is called The Making of Flux. I will also drop the link to the episode right here. And so you can find it there with that link. And great, Chris, cool. Yeah, so like I said, this is a great place to get started, to be more familiar with CNCF projects, how they work, what's involved there, you know, how these things come about in the first place, all those kinds of things you are going to learn throughout this process, all right? So I dropped the link for the first episode. All you need to do in the next few days is to watch or listen to the episode. Like I said, you decide. Watching isn't super important because it's just people talking. Like they're not showing code or sharing slides or anything like that. Awesome, Lily, you're very welcome. And so that's all you gotta do, all right? Is just watch this first episode, keep a document open, and if there are things that you're not sure about, you write them down, right? It's that simple. Anything that comes to mind, you're like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. And don't feel shy or ashamed or worried that there might be quite a few things that you don't know. That is totally okay. That's actually expected, right? If you only write down 2 things, I'm going to be really impressed. And then you can join me in one of the live streams and you can tell other people about Flux, because if you have that much knowledge, it's going to be great, all right? Like I said, don't worry if there are things that sound like it's almost another language or something like that. That's not a problem at all, right? We do not want you to be worried about that at all. That is not something that's going to be an issue here. If you want to see where the transcript is, I will leave that link here as well. That's on the CubeFM website, and that way you can scroll down and you can see the relevant links that are mentioned in there. That might be very helpful for you too in terms of looking at documentation about the different things that are mentioned there. And then, like I said, then the transcription, so you can look for those keywords and the different things are mentioned. Okay, so like I said, in the first episode, there will be 3 speakers. Well, there's a 4th. I'm the narrator. And then we have Chris Anichek, who's the CTO of the CNCF and also Linux Foundation. And then we also have Andrew Martin, who's the CEO of ControlPlane, who's a dear friend of mine and a wonderful person. I'm very looking forward for all of you to have the chance to meet him. He's a great person and very high energy and just a wonderful guy. And then also Alexis Richardson, who's the sort of the creator of this term, the idea of GitOps, that was also mentioned in the chat, that's used for continuous delivery, a very powerful technology in the Kubernetes world. It's not the only technology that's used for GitOps. There's another technology that's called Argo, that's also an open source project in the CNCF that has a very strong community behind it, just like the Flux community. So like I said, these are the things we want to start out with. You don't need to do anything else, right? So I don't want you to feel pressure that there's anything else for you to do. I just want you to watch this, that you create your document, watch or listen, and then you add me to the document so I can see the stuff that you put in there. And then after that, then we can share some instructions. If you filled out the form to participate in this Explorers program, then we will be able to communicate with you via email. And so there shouldn't be any problems there. I will drop the link to that here. Thank you, Colleen. So yeah, with that, I think we're pretty much ready to go. Thank you all very much for joining today. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any additional questions. I can also be found in the CNCF Slack. I hope you all have a very wonderful weekend and really looking forward to the next steps with all of you. I'm super excited about this. Like I said, it's been a while since I've done an Explorers program, but they're always a ton of fun. We learn a lot from each other. We get to enjoy the process. So take care and have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Bye-bye. Cheers.